Story: The Little Turtle and the Stream's Song. Once upon a time, there was a little turtle who lived near a clear stream. Every day he would walk slowly along the bank, listening to the gentle flow of water. To the turtle, the sound was like music that calmed his heart. One day, the stream began to dry because of the scorching sun. The song the turtle loved grew softer and softer, until it was almost gone. The little turtle felt sad and worried that he would never hear the water's music again. So he went to ask his forest friends what he should do. The squirrel said, "Let's try digging a channel." The owl said, "We need to find the source of the water." The deer said, "If we work together, anything is possible." All the animals gathered to help. Some dug small channels. Some carried water from far away. Even though they were tired, they smiled, wishing for the stream to return. At last, the water began to flow again. The gentle song of the stream returned, as bright and clear as before. The little turtle listened with joy in his heart and thanked his friends for not leaving him alone. From that day on, whenever the turtle heard the stream's song, he never thought of it as music just for himself, but as the melody of friendship, created by everyone together. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that the most beautiful song of all is the friendship and kindness we share in difficult times. Story: The Fox Who Wanted Friends. Once upon a time, there was a small orange fox who lived alone in a burrow beneath a great tree. Every day, he went out to search for food by himself. He often watched other animals playing together with joy. But he only sighed quietly, too shy to approach anyone. One day, the fox saw a baby bird fall from its nest. He quickly rushed to help, gently carrying the bird back to the tree. The little bird smiled and said, "Thank you, you can always be my friend." The fox was surprised, for it was the first time someone had called him a friend. From that day on, the fox began to make more friends. He played with the squirrel, ran with the deer, and chatted with the wise owl at night. But deep inside, he still worried that if he made mistakes, they might not want to be his friends anymore. Not long after, a great storm struck, and the rain flooded the stream. All the animals hurried to find shelter, but the little squirrel was trapped in the middle of the path. The fox did not hesitate, he dashed through the rain to save his friend. This time, no one laughed or ignored him, instead everyone hugged him with gratitude. When the storm had passed, the sky became bright again. The fox realized that having friends did not mean being perfect. It meant caring for one another and never abandoning each other in hard times. From then on, he was never lonely again. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that true friendship does not come from being perfect, but from honesty, care, and standing by each other through every storm. Story: The Owl and the Starlight. Once upon a time in a quiet forest, there lived an owl in a tall tree. Every night, he would sit and gaze at the sky filled with twinkling stars. The owl always wondered what secrets were hidden in their light. One night, a little mouse got lost in the forest. He was frightened and cried because he could not find his way home. The owl heard the sobs and flew down gently, asking, "What has happened to you?" The little mouse explained everything, and the owl decided to guide him back. Along the way, the owl told the little mouse to look up at the night sky. Each night, the stars shine like a tiny map. If we learn to observe them, they can guide us home. The little mouse listened carefully and felt comforted, no longer afraid. They walked under the starlight until they reached the edge of the forest where the village stood. The little mouse smiled with tears in his eyes and thanked the owl for his kindness. The owl nodded gently and flew back to his tree beneath the endless stars. From that night on, the little mouse always looked up at the sky whenever he traveled in the dark. He never felt alone again, believing the stars and the owl were always watching over him. Glowing star moral of the story: this story teaches us that even when the path ahead feels dark and frightening, with a guiding light and the help of others, we can always find our way home. Story: The Rabbit Who Wanted to Fly. Once upon a time in a deep forest, there was a little rabbit who loved to watch the sky. He envied the birds that flew freely, and always whispered to himself, "If only I could fly too." The rabbit no longer wanted to hop on the ground, he dreamed of soaring through the sky. One day, the rabbit tried to leap off a tall rock, hoping to fly like the birds. But instead of soaring, he tumbled down painfully. His forest friends laughed, but the rabbit refused to give up. The rabbit went to ask the wise old owl for advice. The owl said, "Wings alone don't make flight. Effort and understanding are just as important." Those words made the rabbit start thinking of new ways. After that, the rabbit began collecting leaves and twigs to build wings of his own. He tied them to his back, then leapt from a hill. Though he could not fly, he glided softly, gentler than before. The forest animals who once laughed, now came back to help the rabbit strengthen his wings. They worked together with care until the wings looked more real. The rabbit was happy that he no longer had to try alone. In the end, the rabbit still could not fly like the birds. But he could leap and glide from the hill with joy. Most importantly, he learned that dreams become brighter when friends are there to support you. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that even if we cannot do things exactly like others, with persistence and the help of friends, we can still find happiness in our own way. Story: The Rabbit and the Turtle. Once upon a time in a great forest, there was a rabbit who was the fastest among all animals. He loved to boast to his friends that no one could ever defeat his speed. One day, he laughed at a small turtle who slowly walked along the path. "You walk as slow as a snail, how will you ever keep up with anyone?" the rabbit said while laughing. The turtle smiled gently and replied, "Sometimes speed is not everything. If you don't believe me, let's have a race." All the animals were surprised and excited to see the challenge. The next day, they gathered in the meadow to watch the race between the rabbit and the turtle. When the signal was given, both of them started the race. The rabbit ran far ahead, so far that he could not even see the turtle. He looked back and laughed, "The turtle will take all day to arrive." Confident in himself, the rabbit decided to rest under a tree and soon fell asleep. Meanwhile, the turtle kept walking step by step with determination. He ignored the laughter and the mocking words. His only goal was to keep moving forward without stopping. When the rabbit finally woke up, he rushed toward the finish line. But it was too late, for the turtle had already crossed it. All the forest animals clapped for the turtle, while the rabbit sat in shame for being careless. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that perseverance and consistency matter more than speed and overconfidence. Story: The Mouse and the Big Cheese. Once upon a time, there was a little mouse who lived in a barn. One day, he found a huge piece of cheese left behind by the farmer. The mouse was overjoyed and tried to drag it back to his nest. But the cheese was far too big for him to carry alone. He pulled and pushed, but it would not move. The little mouse grew tired and thought he would never taste it. Soon, his fellow mice heard the noise and came to help. Some bit into it, some pushed, and others pulled. Little by little, the big cheese moved closer to the nest. At last, the mice managed to bring the cheese home. They sat around it together and shared the meal happily. The little mouse smiled, realizing that sharing was better than keeping it all for himself. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that cooperation and sharing bring more happiness than struggling alone. Story: The Lion King and His New Friends. Once upon a time, in a great forest lived a lion, the king of all animals. Wherever he walked, the other creatures ran away in fear. The lion felt lonely because no one dared to come near. One day, a little squirrel got lost and could not find his way home. He cried under a big tree. The lion heard his sobs and came closer. When the squirrel saw the lion, he trembled in fear. But the lion spoke gently, "Don't be afraid, I will help you." He guided the little squirrel safely back to his nest. News of the kind lion spread through the forest. The animals began to approach him and realized he was not frightening at all. From that day, the lion was no longer lonely. The lion learned that strength alone was not enough. Kindness was what warmed the heart and brought true friendship. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that kindness wins more true friends than strength alone. Story: The Little Bird and the Big Tree. Once upon a time, there was a little bird living on a big tree by the river. The tree gave him shelter, shade, and small fruits to eat every day. The little bird loved the tree dearly, and the tree loved him too. One day, a strong storm came, and the fierce wind broke many branches. The little bird was frightened, thinking he would lose his home. He asked the tree, "What should we do?" The big tree smiled and said, "Don't worry. My roots are still strong." After the storm had passed, the little bird gathered twigs to rebuild his nest. The big tree sprouted new leaves and branches once again. Together they learned that even after the storm, life can always begin anew. From that day on, the little bird and the big tree lived happily together. The bird sang every morning, and the tree spread its branches wide, giving him a warm home. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that no matter how many storms or obstacles we face, if we stand firm and don't give up, new beginnings will always come. Story: The Dog and the Shadow. Once upon a time, there was a dog who received a piece of meat from the market. He carried it happily in his mouth, running along the road with joy. In his mind, he thought of how delicious the meal would be. When he came to a small wooden bridge over a stream, the dog looked down into the water and saw his own reflection. But he thought it was another dog holding a bigger piece of meat. Greedy, he barked at the shadow in the water. At that moment, the piece of meat he carried dropped into the stream. The water swept it away quickly and it was gone. The dog panicked and tried to grab it, but it was too late. In the end, he lost both his own meat and the one he thought the other dog had. So he walked away hungry and regretful. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that greed can make us lose what we already have. Story: The Lion and the Mouse. Once upon a time, a mighty lion, king of the forest, was sleeping under a big tree. Suddenly, a little mouse ran across and accidentally stepped on the lion's paw. The lion woke up in anger and caught the tiny mouse under his paw. The little mouse trembled with fear and said, "Please let me go. One day, I may be able to help you." The lion laughed loudly, "You, a tiny mouse, help me? Impossible." But at last, he decided to let the mouse go. Not long after, the lion was trapped by a hunter's net. He roared and struggled, but he could not break free. The little mouse, remembering the lion's mercy, hurried to help. The mouse used his sharp teeth to gnaw at the ropes. Bit by bit, strand by strand, until finally the net broke. The lion was free again, and he looked at the mouse with gratitude. "Today I have learned that even the smallest creature can help the greatest one," said the lion. From then on, the lion and the mouse became good friends and lived peacefully in the forest. This story teaches us that we should never underestimate others, for even the smallest can make a big difference. Story: The Mouse and the Gentle Cow. Once upon a time, there was a little mouse living in a wide meadow. He loved to run and play, but the larger animals often teased him for being weak. One day, the mouse cried because no one wanted to play with him. A gentle cow who lived nearby saw him and walked closer. She lowered her head and said kindly, "Don't worry, little one. Even though you are small, you have great value in your own way." From then on, the mouse and the cow became friends. They played together in the open fields every day. The mouse climbed onto the cow's back and sang happily. One day, a strong storm blew across the meadow. The wind was so powerful that the hay scattered everywhere. The little mouse almost got blown away, but the cow shielded him with her body. When the storm was over, the mouse whispered, "Thank you, my dear friend. You have shown me that true strength is protecting others." The gentle cow smiled, and they laughed together. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that friendship is not about size or appearance, but about sincerity and caring for one another. Story: The Frog and the Raindrops. Once upon a time, there was a little frog who lived by a lotus pond. He loved to hop around, but during the hot season the water slowly dried up. The little frog grew sad because there was no water to play in. One night, he looked up at the sky and wished, "Please let the rain fall." Soon, dark clouds gathered and the rain began to fall gently. The frog leapt with joy, splashing happily. But the rain grew heavier until the pond overflowed. Small animals became frightened of the rushing water. The frog quickly helped insects and even a baby bird onto the lily pads to keep them safe. When the rain finally stopped, all the creatures were safe. They thanked the little frog, who not only enjoyed the rain but also shared its blessing with others. From then on, the frog never thought of rain as a gift only for himself. He saw it as a chance for all life in the pond to thrive, and a way to help others. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that when we receive something good, we should share it and use it to help others too. Story: The Fire Dragon and the Brave Girl. Once upon a time, there was a great emerald dragon who lived on a mountain. He was very lonely, for no one dared to come near him. Every time he tried to speak, flames burst from his mouth without control. The villagers feared him, believing he was dangerous. They always ran away whenever the dragon tried to greet them. The dragon grew sad and thought he would never have a friend. One day, a little girl climbed up the mountain. She saw the dragon but did not run away. Instead, she smiled and said, "Hello, would you like to be my friend?" The dragon quickly shook his head, afraid of hurting her. But the girl said, "It's okay. If you fear the fire, then write instead of speaking." She handed him a stick, and the dragon used his gentle fire to write words on the ground. From that day on, the two shared stories through this new way. The dragon laughed and played with the girl, no longer feeling lonely. When the villagers saw the dragon was harmless, they slowly came closer. In time, they accepted him, and the dragon gained many friends. At last, he used his fiery gift to bring warmth and wonder instead of fear. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that differences are not barriers to friendship, if we learn to understand each other and share kindness in our own way. Story: The Little Bear and the Honey Pot. Once upon a time, there was a little bear who loved honey very much. Every day, he went out to look for honey from the beehives in the forest. One day, he found a honey pot left behind by a farmer. The little bear was so happy that he almost jumped. He lifted the pot and thought, "Today I will eat honey until I am full." But the honey inside was far too much for him to finish. He tried to eat quickly, and the honey spilled all over him. The bees nearby smelled it and came buzzing after him. The little bear panicked and ran, but slipped because of the sticky honey on his paws. At last, he grew tired and stopped under a big tree. He realized, if I eat only a little at a time and share with my friends, I won't have to suffer like this. The next day, the little bear shared the honey with the other animals in the forest. They all smiled and thanked him. From then on, the little bear had both happiness and many friends. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that sharing brings more joy and friendship than keeping everything for yourself. Story: The Little Girl and the Star. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who loved watching the night sky. She always wondered whether the shining stars were near or far. Some nights, she wished she could hold one in her hands. One evening, a tiny star fell into the meadow near her home. The girl ran outside and found the star glowing gently before her. Carefully, she held it in her hands. The star spoke softly, "Do not be afraid. I am a star who longs for a friend." The little girl giggled and said, "Then I will be your friend." From that night, they talked together under the sky. But soon, the star grew sad, missing the heavens above. The girl's heart ached, knowing she must let it go. "Go back and shine brightly. I will always look up to find you." The star glowed brighter and slowly floated back into the sky. The little girl smiled through her tears, knowing that whenever she saw the stars, her friend was watching from above. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that true friendship means giving what is best for your friend, even if it means letting go. Story: The Little Elephant and the Moon. Once upon a time, there was a little elephant living in the great forest. Every night, he looked up at the glowing moon above. In his heart, he dreamed of reaching it one day. The little elephant stretched his trunk as high as he could. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not touch it. His friends laughed and said, "How could an elephant ever reach the moon?" One night, a wise old owl flew by and saw the little elephant trying again. The owl said, "You may never touch the moon with your trunk. But you can always reach it with your dreams and your heart." The little elephant thought carefully and followed the advice. He closed his eyes and wished upon the moon with all his heart. The moon shone warmly, as if answering his prayer. From then on, the little elephant was never sad again. Because he knew that some dreams don't need to be held by hand. It was enough just to watch and send his heart to them. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that some dreams may not be reached with our hands, but they can always be touched with our hearts. Story: The Little Boy and the Rainbow. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who loved to draw the sky. He often used crayons to color the sun and the clouds. But what he wanted to see most with his own eyes was a rainbow. One day, after a heavy rain, the boy ran out into the meadow. There, for the first time, he saw a rainbow stretching across the sky. He stood in awe, smiling with joy. He tried running closer, hoping to touch the rainbow. But no matter how far he ran, the rainbow seemed to stay far away. The boy felt tired and discouraged, but he didn't give up easily. At last, he stopped to catch his breath and gazed at the rainbow again. He realized that some beauty in life is not meant to be possessed. It is precious simply because we can admire it with our hearts. From then on, the boy always drew rainbows in his sketchbook. Every time he looked at them, he remembered the day he truly saw one in the sky. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that some of life's most beautiful things are not meant to be owned, but to be cherished and admired. Story: The Crow and the Pitcher. Once upon a time, there was a crow flying around in search of food and water. The day was hot, and the crow grew very thirsty. At last, he found a tall water pitcher by a house. But there was only a little water at the bottom of the pitcher. The crow tried to dip his beak inside but could not reach. He grew tired and almost gave up. Then he noticed some small stones scattered around. The crow picked them up one by one and dropped them into the pitcher. Slowly, the water rose higher. At last, the water reached the brim, and the crow could drink. He quenched his thirst, happy with his clever solution. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that no matter how hard a problem seems, it can be solved with patience and clever thinking. Story: The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, 3 little pigs set out to build their own homes. The first pig built a house of straw, quick and easy. The second pig built a house of sticks, a bit stronger than straw. The third pig worked the hardest, building a sturdy house of bricks. Soon after, a hungry wolf came by. He wanted to eat the little pigs for dinner. He went to the straw house first and huffed and puffed until it blew down. The first pig ran to his brother's house. The wolf then went to the stick house. He huffed and puffed again, and the stick house fell apart. The 2 pigs ran as fast as they could to their youngest brother's brick house. Finally, the wolf came to the brick house. He huffed and puffed with all his strength, but the house stood firm. Angry, he tried to climb down the chimney. But the pigs lit a fire, and the wolf ran away, never to return. The 3 little pigs cheered with joy. They learned that hard work and patience bring safety and happiness in the end. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that hard work and building strong foundations help us overcome challenges. Story: Journey to the West. Once upon a time, there was a magical monkey named Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Born from a sacred stone, he was strong and clever, but also mischievous. After causing great trouble in heaven, he was punished and trapped beneath a mountain for hundreds of years. One day, a kind monk named Tang Sanzang was chosen to journey to India to bring back sacred scriptures. The Bodhisattva Guanyin freed the Monkey King, so he could protect the monk on his long and dangerous path. Sun Wukong swore to stay by the monk's side, using his strength and wits. Along the way, they gained new companions. The first was Zhu Baji, once a heavenly general, now turned into a pig. Though lazy and greedy, he was loyal when it truly mattered. The second was Shuo Wujing, a river ogre exiled from heaven. Though he looked fierce, he had a gentle heart and often carried their burdens during the journey. Together, the four travelers faced countless demons and hardships. Many monsters sought to capture Tang Sanzang to gain immortality. But with Wukong's courage, his friend's support, and the monk's faith, they overcame every danger. The journey took them across mountains, rivers, and deserts. Whenever they grew weary, Tang Sanzang reminded them, "A steady heart and compassion will guide us." And his companions learned patience, teamwork, and selflessness. At last, after passing 81 trials, they reached India. They obtained the sacred scriptures and safely returned to China. The Monkey King and his friends were rewarded by heaven. Tang Sanzang was honored as a bodhisattva. And they all realized the greatest treasure was not only the scriptures, but the friendship, courage, and growth they found along the way. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that life's journey is full of challenges, but with courage, compassion, and teamwork, we can overcome anything. Story: The Ugly Duckling. Once upon a time, by a quiet pond, a mother duck was waiting for her eggs to hatch. One day, the eggs cracked open, revealing cute little yellow ducklings. But one egg was larger than the rest and took longer to hatch. When it finally cracked, out came a big gray duckling, looking very different. The other ducklings laughed at him, calling him ugly duckling. He felt sad and lonely. Day after day, the ugly duckling was teased until he no longer wanted to stay at the pond. He set off to find a place where he would be accepted. But everywhere he went, he was still seen as different. Winter came, and the duckling suffered through the cold alone. But when spring returned, his body slowly transformed. The gray feathers were replaced by shining white wings. At last, he was no longer a duckling, but a graceful swan. As he spread his wings and flew across the sky, everyone admired his beauty. He was no longer lonely, for he discovered his true worth. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that being different is not a flaw, but a unique beauty waiting to be revealed. Story: The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy who lived in a small village. Every day, he took his flock of sheep to graze on the hill. His job was quiet, and soon he began to feel bored. One day, he wanted to play a trick on the villagers. He shouted loudly, "Wolf! Wolf! The wolf is coming to eat the sheep!" The villagers heard the cry and rushed up the hill to help. But when they arrived, they saw no wolf at all. The boy laughed, delighted that he had fooled them. The villagers were angry and warned him not to lie again. Before long, he played the trick once more. He cried out, "Wolf, help!" Again, the villagers ran up the hill, only to be fooled a second time. At last, one day, a real wolf appeared. It charged at the sheep, and the boy screamed desperately for help. But this time, no one believed him. The wolf killed many sheep, and the boy wept bitterly. He had learned that lying for fun can cause him to lose what matters most. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that if we lie too often, even when we tell the truth, no one will believe us anymore. Story: The Ice Princess and the Warm Heart. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in an ice castle deep in the snowy mountains. She had the power to create snow and ice with just a wave of her hand. But because of her gift, the villagers feared her and kept their distance. The princess lived alone in the cold silence. Each night, she gazed at the warm lights of the village below. In her heart, she wished that one day someone would offer her true friendship. One day, a little boy from the village wandered into the snowy forest. He shivered in the freezing wind, close to collapsing. The princess saw him and built an icy wall to block the wind, guiding him into her castle. The boy did not fear her, but smiled and said, "Thank you, princess." Those words melted the icy silence in her heart. For the first time, she felt warmth she had never known before. From then on, the princess no longer hid herself away. She used her powers to help the village, creating ice to store water in the dry season. Slowly, the people came to see that she was kind and gentle. In the end, the princess learned that warmth does not always come from fire. It comes from the hearts of people who share love and friendship. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that even the coldest heart can be warmed by love and kindness. Story: Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a kind young girl named Cinderella. After her mother passed away, her father remarried. Her stepmother and stepsisters treated her cruelly, forcing her to do all the chores. One day, the palace announced a grand ball where the prince would choose his bride. Her stepmother forbade her to attend. Heartbroken, Cinderella wept alone. Suddenly, her fairy godmother appeared. With a wave of her wand, she turned a pumpkin into a carriage, mice into horses, and gave Cinderella a sparkling gown with glass slippers. At the ball, Cinderella danced with the prince all night. But when the clock struck midnight, the magic would vanish. She ran away, leaving behind one glass slipper. The prince searched for the girl who fit the slipper. Her stepsisters tried, but their feet did not fit. When Cinderella tried, it fit perfectly. At last, the prince took Cinderella as his bride. She lived happily ever after, surrounded by love and kindness. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that kindness and patience will eventually lead us to a beautiful destiny. Story: The Tortoise and the Eagle. Once upon a time, there was a tortoise living on the ground. He watched the birds flying above and grew envious. "If only I could fly like them," he said to himself. One day, the tortoise asked an eagle to teach him to fly. The eagle replied, "You were made to walk, not to fly." But the tortoise refused to listen and kept begging. At last, the eagle agreed to carry him into the sky. The tortoise was amazed, seeing the wide world below. But when the eagle let go, the tortoise fell and cracked his shell. Before the end, the tortoise whispered, "I should have been content with what nature gave me." Moral of the story: this story teaches us that we should not fight against our nature, but instead cherish who we are. Story: The Rabbit on the Moon. Once upon a time, there was a great archer named Hu Yi. In those days, 10 suns rose in the sky, scorching the earth. Hu Yi shot down 9 of them, leaving only one, saving the world. As a reward, he was given the elixir of immortality. But his wife, Chang'e, feared it might fall into the wrong hands. She drank it herself, and her body floated up to the heavens, becoming the Lady of the Moon. On the moon, she was not alone. A gentle white rabbit lived there with her, pounding herbs in a magic mortar to heal the sick. From Earth, people could see the shadow of the rabbit upon the moon's surface. Since then, on nights of the full moon, people light lanterns and gaze at the sky. They believe Chang'e and the white rabbit still dwell there. This tale has been passed down in the Mid-Autumn Festival. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that true sacrifice for the greater good may bring separation, but the goodness will always be remembered. Story: Urashima Taro. Once upon a time, there was a young fisherman named Urashima Taro. One day, he saw children teasing a turtle on the shore. Taro felt pity, rescued the turtle, and set it free in the sea. The next day, the turtle returned and spoke to him. "Thank you for saving me. The princess of the Dragon Palace wishes to meet you." The turtle carried Taro deep into the ocean to a magnificent palace. There, he met Princess Otoheim, who welcomed him kindly. She invited him to stay as her guest. Taro spent days filled with joy and wonder. But soon, he longed for his parents and his home. He asked to return, and the princess gave him a small box. "This is a treasure box. Never open it," she said. When Taro reached the shore, he was shocked. The village had changed, and the people were strangers. He realized that hundreds of years had passed. In despair, He opened the forbidden box. At once, white smoke rose, and Taro grew old and weak. He collapsed, left only with memories of the Dragon Palace. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that time is precious, and we must cherish every moment we have. Story, Momotaro, the Peach Boy. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and an old woman in a small village. One day, the old woman went to the river to wash clothes. She found a giant peach floating downstream, and when she cut it open, a baby boy was inside. They named him Momotaro, the Peach Boy. Momotaro grew strong and kind-hearted. One day, he learned that demons on Ogre Island were stealing treasures and harming villages. He decided to set out on a journey to defeat them and protect the people. The old woman made millet dumplings called kibidango for his journey. Along the way, Momotaro met a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant. He shared the dumplings with them, and they agreed to join him. Together, they sailed to Ogre Island. There, they found the demons feasting and guarding their stolen treasures. Momotaro and his companions prepared to fight bravely. The dog bit fiercely, the monkey climbed and broke chains, and the pheasant swooped from the sky. Momotaro fought with courage until the demons surrendered. They promised never to harm the villages again. Momotaro and his friends carried back the treasures. The villagers rejoiced and honored them for their bravery. From then on, the story of Momotaro was passed down through generations. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that with courage and teamwork, even the greatest evils can be overcome. Story, The Stag and His Reflection. Once upon a time, a stag went to drink water at a clear pond. As he looked down, he saw his own reflection shining in the water. He admired his great, beautiful antlers with pride. But when his eyes turned to his long, thin legs, he felt ashamed and thought they looked ugly. My antlers are magnificent, but my legs are disgraceful, he thought. Suddenly, a lion appeared in the forest. The stag panicked and ran as fast as he could. His thin legs carried him swiftly, almost letting him escape. But as he dashed into the bushes, his antlers became tangled in the branches. He struggled, but the more he fought, the tighter he was trapped. At last, the lion caught up with him, and he could not flee anymore. Before the end, the stag sighed, I praised what could not save me, and despised what was most precious. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that what we despise may turn out to be the most valuable when we truly need it. Story, The Frog and the Ox. Once upon a time, in a green meadow, a little frog was playing near a pond. Suddenly, he looked up and saw a huge ox grazing peacefully. The frog was amazed at the ox's great size. He rushed back to his friends at the pond and shouted, "You won't believe it. I saw the largest creature in the world today." The other frogs laughed. "Nothing is bigger than you." Annoyed, the little frog puffed up his belly. "See, I can be as big as that ox." But his friends kept laughing. "You're still tiny." Angrier, the frog puffed up more and more. He swelled until his skin was tight and trembling. At last, pop! The little frog burst apart. The other frogs fell silent, realizing the danger of such foolish pride. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that trying too hard to be like others can only harm ourselves. Story, The Ant and the Grasshopper. Once upon a time, in a green meadow, an ant worked hard each day, collecting food little by little to store for the winter. The grasshopper, however, played music, sang songs, and laughed at the ant. "Why work so hard every day? Come and enjoy with me," said the grasshopper. But the ant smiled and replied, "I must prepare while the time is right." When winter arrived, the meadow turned white with snow. Food was scarce, and the grasshopper grew weak with hunger. He stumbled to the ant's home and begged for food. The ant looked at him and said, "This is the result of how you spent your time. If you had worked when you should, you would not suffer today." From then on, the grasshopper remembered the lesson. He never mocked hard work again. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that hard work and preparation are the keys to surviving hard times. Story: The Sparrow and the Rice Stalks. Once upon a time, a little sparrow lived near a rice field. Every day, it flew to pick up fallen grains from the ground. It was grateful for the food the field always provided. One day, it saw some rice stalks standing tall with pride. They mocked the stalks that bent low. "Look at us. We stand higher, never bowing to anyone." But the sparrow noticed that the bent stalks were heavy with grains. The stalks that stood tall and stiff were empty. It realized that humility was a sign of true richness. When harvest season came, the farmer carefully gathered the heavy, bowing stalks. The empty ones were left behind, of no use. The sparrow remembered this lesson. It knew that true worth comes from being humble and fruitful, not from pride. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that humility and true value are far greater than empty pride. Story: The Fox and the Grapes. Once upon a time, on a hot summer day, a hungry fox wandered through the fields, tired and thirsty. He longed for something refreshing to eat. Soon, he came across a vineyard. Clusters of ripe purple grapes hung from the tall vines. The fox licked his lips and thought, "If only I could taste those grapes." He stretched up on his toes, trying to reach them. But the grapes were far too high. So he leapt again, and again, and again. He jumped until he was exhausted, panting heavily. The grapes still hung high above, untouched. Frustration grew inside him. At last, the fox sat down angrily and shouted, "Those grapes must be sour anyway. I don't want them," and with that, he walked away with an empty stomach. But deep down, he knew the truth. He simply couldn't reach them, and his words were only an excuse. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that people often despise what they cannot achieve, instead of admitting the truth. Story: The Farmer and the Snake. Once upon a time, on a freezing winter's day, a farmer was walking across the field when he found a snake lying almost dead from the cold. Feeling pity, he picked it up and held it close to his chest to warm it. As the snake grew warm, it slowly regained strength. The moment it opened its eyes, it struck and bit the farmer deeply. The farmer fell, knowing his end was near. With his last breath, he whispered, "How foolish I was to think kindness to the wicked would make them change." Moral of the story. This story teaches us that showing mercy to those with evil natures can bring harm to ourselves. Story: The Wolf and the Lamb. Once upon a time, a little lamb went down to drink at a clear stream. At the same time, a hungry wolf appeared. He eyed the lamb and sought an excuse to attack. The wolf shouted, "You are muddying the water, making it undrinkable for me." The lamb politely replied, "But you are upstream, and I am downstream. The water flows from you to me." The wolf then growled, "Then you must have insulted me last year." The lamb shook his head and said, "I was not even born then." No matter what the lamb said, the wolf would not listen. At last, the wolf leapt upon him and carried him away. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that those who wish to do wrong will never listen to reason, and will always find excuses. Story: The Wind and the Sun. Once upon a time, the wind and the sun argued about who was stronger. The wind boasted, "No one can resist my force." The sun smiled gently and replied, "Yet sometimes warmth is stronger than strength." They agreed to put it to the test. Below them, a traveler walked along the road wearing a thick cloak. "Whoever makes him remove his cloak shall be the winner," declared the wind. The wind went first. He blew fiercely, shaking trees and scattering leaves. But the traveler only pulled his cloak tighter around himself. The wind grew angrier and blew harder, but the man clutched his cloak stubbornly. Then it was the sun's turn. He shone softly at first, then warmer and warmer. The air grew pleasant, and the traveler began to sweat. Finally, smiling, he removed his cloak. The wind sighed in defeat. And the sun said kindly, "Gentleness can achieve what force cannot." Moral of the story. This story teaches us that gentleness and kindness can be more powerful than harshness and force. Story: The Mouse and the Frog. Once upon a time, there was a house mouse and a frog who lived near a pond. They often met and talked, becoming friends. One day, the frog said slyly, "You should stay with me in the pond. We can play in the water all day." The mouse shook his head. "I prefer the land. I'm not fond of water." But the frog was stubborn. He tied the mouse's leg to his own with a vine. "Now you cannot escape me," he laughed. The frog leapt into the water, dragging the mouse along. The mouse struggled desperately, splashing, but soon water filled his nose and mouth. At last, he drowned. Not long after, a hawk flew overhead. It saw the drowned mouse floating, tied to the frog. The hawk swooped down, seizing the mouse and carried the frog with it. The frog perished, caught in the fate he had set for another. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that keeping bad company or following the deceitful may lead us to our own ruin. Story: The Stag and the Hunter. Once upon a time, a stag went to drink from a clear pond. As he gazed into the water, he admired the reflection of his great, branching antlers. "They are so beautiful," he thought, "surely everyone must envy me." But when he looked down at his thin legs, he frowned. "These legs are so ugly and weak, unlike my glorious horns." Just then, whoosh, an arrow flew past. A hunter had spotted him and aimed his bow. The stag bolted in fear, racing into the forest. His slender legs carried him swiftly through the trees. He almost escaped the hunter's pursuit. But as he dashed into thick bushes, his antlers became tangled in the branches. He struggled and pulled, but the harder he fought, the tighter he was caught. The hunter drew closer step by step. The stag sighed, "Alas, what I despised has saved me, and what I prized has destroyed me." Soon after, he met his fate, undone by his vanity. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that what we scorn may prove most useful, while what we admire too much may bring us harm. Story: The Donkey in the Lion's Skin. Once upon a time, a donkey grew tired of being mocked as foolish and weak. One day, he found a lion's skin left behind in the forest. His eyes sparkled. "If I wear this, everyone will fear me." He draped the lion's skin over himself and strode out proudly. The other animals, seeing him, fled in terror. The donkey laughed inside, believing he had become mighty. 4 days, he enjoyed his disguise. No cow, goat, or sheep dared to come near. He basked in the respect he thought he had gained. But one day, as he paraded, he opened his mouth to bray. The sound was not a lion's roar but a donkey's hee-haw. At once, all the animals realized the truth and burst into laughter. A hunter passing by chuckled and said, "Had you kept silent, you might have fooled us much longer." Ashamed, the donkey lowered his head, learning that truth cannot be hidden forever. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that pretending can only fool others for a time. The truth will always be revealed. Story: The Crow and the Snake. Once upon a time, a pair of crows lived in a tall tree. They built a warm nest and waited for their chicks to hatch. But whenever the eggs were about to hatch, a wicked snake from below the tree climbed up and devoured them. The crows were heartbroken, but powerless to stop it. One day, the male crow devised a clever plan. He flew to a wealthy man's house and snatched a golden bracelet. Then he returned and dropped it near the snake's hole. When the man saw the crow fly away with his bracelet, he chased after it. Finding the treasure near the snake's hole, the man dug to retrieve it. The snake was discovered and killed. From that day on, the crows were safe, and they raised their chicks in peace. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that wit and cleverness can overcome brute force. Story: The Dog and the Bell. Once upon a time, there was a dog that often attacked and bit other animals in the village. Tired of this, his owner decided to give a warning to everyone. He tied a bell around the dog's neck. Now, whenever the dog ran, the bell jingled ding-a-ling. Hearing the sound, people quickly moved away, and no one was harmed. But the dog thought the bell was a special ornament of honor. He strutted proudly through the village. "Look at me, I'm the most special dog. Everyone hears me when I come." He felt proud, never realizing the truth. At last, an older dog came up to him and said, "Foolish one, the bell you wear is not a sign of honor. It is a mark of shame, warning others that you are dangerous." The dog then realized that boasting of disgrace is nothing to be proud of. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that one should never take pride in what is a mark of shame. Story: The Farmer and His Sons. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who had several sons. But the sons often quarreled and never helped each other. The farmer worried that after his death, they would not survive alone. One day, he called all his sons together. He brought out a bundle of sticks tied tightly. He asked each of them to try to break it. One by one they tried, but none could succeed. Then the farmer untied the bundle and gave them the sticks separately. This time, each son broke the sticks with ease. The farmer said, "Do you see? United, you are strong and no one can harm you. But divided, you are weak and can be easily destroyed." The sons felt ashamed and promised their father. From that day on, they worked together in harmony. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that unity brings strength, while division brings weakness. Story: The Fox and the Stork. Once upon a time, a sly fox decided to play a trick on his friend, the stork. He invited the stork to dine at his house. When it was time to eat, the fox served the meal on shallow plates. He licked and ate happily. But the stork, with his long beak, could not eat a single bite. The fox laughed loudly at the stork's struggle. But the stork only smiled and said, "Thank you for the meal, dear friend. Come dine at my home next time." A few days later, the fox visited the stork. This time, the stork served the food in tall narrow jugs. He dipped his long beak in easily and ate. But the fox could not reach inside the jug at all. He sat there hungry, regretting his trick. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that we should never do to others what we would not want done to ourselves. Story: The Crow and the Dove. Once upon a time, a crow grew envious of the doves. They lived in clean dovecots and always had food to eat. The crow thought, "If only I could be like them." So he covered himself with white dust to look like a dove. Then he boldly flew into the dovecot. But the doves soon smelled the difference and noticed something was wrong. They pecked and drove him away. Ashamed, the crow flew back to his own kind. But the other crows no longer welcomed him either, for he looked strange and unnatural. In the end, the crow was left alone, belonging neither to the doves nor to his own flock. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that pretending to be what we are not may cause us to lose both what we envy and what we truly are. Story: The Stag and His Reflection. Once upon a time, a stag went to drink at a clear pond. As he bent down, he saw his reflection in the water. He admired his large, branching antlers with pride. "How splendid my antlers are, like a crown of the forest king." But when he looked at his slender legs, he sighed. "These thin legs are so ugly." Suddenly, the sound of hounds rang out. A hunter and his dogs approached the pond. The stag panicked and dashed into the forest. His legs carried him swiftly through the fields and woods. He nearly escaped. But his great antlers caught in the branches of the trees. The more he struggled, the tighter they held. The hounds came closer and closer. The stag cried in despair. "What I admired has betrayed me, and what I scorned has saved me." At last, he was caught, and the lesson was never forgotten. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that what we admire too much may harm us, while what we scorn may be our greatest strength. Story: The Wolf and the Young Goat. Once upon a time, a young goat stood upon a high cliff. Below, a hungry wolf prowled back and forth, longing to catch him. The wolf looked up and called sweetly, "Dear goat, it is dangerous up there. Why not come down? I will lead you to soft, sweet grass to eat your fill." The young goat chuckled. "I might believe you, if your growling stomach weren't speaking louder than your words." The wolf snarled in frustration, his trick exposed. The goat stood proudly on the cliff, safe from harm. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that we should never trust flattering words from those with ill intent. Story: The Horse and the Shepherd. Once upon a time, there was a horse living in a wide green meadow. He was strong and swift, but sometimes felt lonely. One day, the horse saw a deer entering his field, eating the grass. Angry, he tried to chase it away, but the deer was too fast. The horse thought, "If only I had help, I could drive him off." So he went to a shepherd and said, "If you help me get rid of the deer, I will let you ride me." The shepherd gladly agreed. He placed a bridle and saddle on the horse, and with the horse's strength, they soon chased the deer away. But from that day on, the horse was never free again. The shepherd kept the bridle and saddle, and rode him whenever he wished. The horse regretted giving up his freedom for a moment of anger. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that we should never surrender our freedom for the sake of fleeting anger or pride. Story: The Goat and the Vine. Once upon a time, a goat was chased by a hunter. He ran as fast as he could until he found a thick patch of vines. Terrified, he slipped inside to hide. Soon the hunter came by. He looked around carefully but did not see the goat, for the vines covered him completely. The goat stood still, his heart pounding. But thinking himself safe, he foolishly began to nibble on the leaves. Crunch, crunch went the sound in the quiet air. The hunter turned at once, hearing the noise. He pushed aside the vines and found the goat. And so, the goat was caught because he could not keep still. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that a small mistake can ruin even the best chance of safety. Story: The Peacock and the Crow. Once upon a time, there was a peacock who took great pride in his colorful feathers. Whenever he spread his tail, the sunlight made it shine and sparkle. All the animals admired him. But a crow watched with envy. He thought, "If only I had such feathers, everyone would love me more." So the crow gathered peacock feathers that had fallen to the ground and stuck them on himself. The next day, the crow strutted out proudly with his borrowed tail. He believed he was the most splendid bird in the forest. But the real peacocks laughed at him and pecked at his false feathers. Ashamed, the crow returned to his own kind. But the other crows rejected him too, for he had tried to be what he was not. The crow was left alone, regretting his foolishness. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that pretending to be what we are not may cause us to lose both who we are and what we desire. Story: The Bear and the Travelers. Once upon a time, two travelers were walking together through a forest. They were close friends, or so they believed. Suddenly, a great bear appeared, growling loudly. The men froze in fear. One quickly scrambled up a tree, leaving his friend behind. He climbed high and hid among the branches. The other, unable to climb, threw himself flat on the ground. He held his breath and pretended to be dead. The bear lumbered closer, sniffing the man all over. It put its nose to his ear and face. But seeing no movement, the bear thought him a corpse and slowly walked away. When the danger was gone, the man from the tree came down. He laughed and said, "So, what secret did the bear whisper in your ear?" The other replied calmly, "He told me never to trust a friend who abandons me in time of need." Moral of the story: this story teaches us that true friends never leave each other in times of danger. Story, The Goose and the Golden Eggs. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who owned a white goose. Every morning, when he went to the coop, he found a golden egg. At first, he was overjoyed, for each golden egg was worth a fortune. Day after day, he sold the eggs and grew richer. But soon, greed filled his heart. He thought, if I could have all the golden eggs at once, I would be rich immediately. So he seized the goose and killed it, cutting it open. He expected to find many golden eggs inside. But there was nothing. Only the body of an ordinary goose. The farmer fell to the ground in regret, ruined by his own greed. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that greed often causes us to lose the very blessings we already have. Story, The Bear and the Bees. Once upon a time, a hungry bear was wandering in the forest. He caught the sweet scent of honey drifting through the air. Following the smell, he found a beehive hanging from a tall tree. His mouth watered. He clawed at the hive, eager to taste the honey. But the bees grew furious. They swarmed out, stinging the bear all over. The bear roared in pain and ran as fast as he could. At last, he dived into a pond to escape the bees. Panting, he muttered to himself, "For a small taste of sweetness, I have suffered great pain." Moral of the story. This story teaches us that seeking short pleasures may bring great troubles. Story, The Man and the Wolf Mother. Once upon a time, a man wandered into the forest and found a cave with wolf cubs inside. Excited, he thought, if I take them, I can raise them for my own use. He picked up the cubs and carried them away. But soon, the mother wolf returned to the cave. Finding her young gone, she howled fiercely and tracked the man's scent. The man heard the howls behind him and panicked. He quickly set the cubs down and ran for his life. The mother wolf rushed to her little ones and carried them safely back to the cave. From that day on, the man vowed never to take what was not his, for greed only brings danger. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that greed may lead us into danger we could easily avoid. Story, The Shepherd and the Wolf. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd on a hillside. Every day, he watched over his flock of sheep, but he grew bored. One day, he decided to play a trick. He shouted toward the village, "Wolf! A wolf is attacking the sheep." The villagers rushed up with weapons, only to find no wolf, just the shepherd laughing. The next day, he did the same. Again, the villagers came, and again they were fooled. Many left grumbling angrily. Not long after, a real wolf appeared. It lunged at the sheep, biting fiercely. Terrified, the shepherd cried out, "Help! This time it's real, the wolf is here." But no one came. The villagers thought it was another lie. In the end, the wolf carried off many sheep, leaving the shepherd in despair. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that those who lie often will not be believed, even when they speak the truth. Story, The Stag at the Vineyard. Once upon a time, a stag was fleeing for his life from hunters and their hounds. He ran across fields, splashed through streams, and finally leapt into a vineyard thick with branches. There, he hid himself among the tangled vines. His chest heaved, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it might give him away. He prayed the hunters would pass without noticing him. Soon, the sound of barking hounds drew near. The hunters entered the vineyard, searching carefully. They peered between rows of vines but saw nothing. One of them muttered, "The beast must have run deeper into the woods." Then they turned and walked away. The stag stood frozen in place. Hope began to rise in his heart. But as time passed, hunger gnawed at him. Believing the danger had passed, the stag began nibbling at the nearby leaves. The sound of crunching and the shaking of the branches betrayed his hiding spot. One hunter glanced back and noticed the movement of the vines. He returned to investigate, parted the branches, and there stood the stag. At once, the hounds lunged. The stag struggled in vain, but he was caught. And thus, his life ended, not by the skill of the hunters, but by his own carelessness. With his final breath, the stag lamented. The very vines that sheltered me have now brought about my ruin. My hunger and folly have destroyed me. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that good fortune may be ruined by even the smallest act of carelessness. Story, Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack who lived with his mother in a poor little cottage. They were so poor they hardly had enough food to eat. One day, Jack's mother told him to take their last cow to the market and sell it for money. On the way, Jack met a strange man who offered him a handful of magic beans in exchange for the cow. When Jack brought them home, his mother was furious and threw the beans out the window. The next morning, Jack woke to find a giant beanstalk stretching high into the clouds. Curious, he climbed it. At the top, he discovered a huge castle. Inside, he heard a thunderous voice, "Fie fi for fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman." Jack hid and watched as the giant counted bags of gold. On the table sat a magic hen that laid golden eggs, and a harp that played by itself. Each time the giant fell asleep, Jack stole something, first the gold, then the hen. But on his third visit, as he tried to take the harp, it cried out and woke the giant. The giant roared and chased Jack all the way to the beanstalk. Jack scrambled down as fast as he could. At the bottom, he grabbed an axe and chopped the stalk. The beanstalk crashed down, and the giant fell to his death. From then on, Jack and his mother lived happily with their newfound treasures. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that bravery and cleverness can change destiny, but greed may lead to danger. Story, The Fisherman and the Little Fish. Once upon a time, there was a fisherman who cast his nets in the river every day. Some days he caught big fish. Other days, he caught nothing at all. One day, he pulled up his net and found only a small fish struggling inside. He looked at it with disappointment and thought, "This is hardly enough for a meal." Then the little fish spoke. "Please, kind fisherman, let me go. Today I am too small to be of use. But one day, I will grow larger, and you can catch me again." The fisherman chuckled. He replied, "Perhaps I might catch you again when you're bigger, but perhaps I will never see you again. What I have in my hand today is worth more than a promise tomorrow." So he kept the little fish and went home with a smile. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that a sure thing today is worth more than an uncertain promise of tomorrow. Story, The Sparrow and the Horse. Once upon a time, a horse was made to pull a farmer's cart. Day after day, he worked hard, sweating heavily, but never complained. One day, a little sparrow flew down and perched on the horse's back. Puffing out his chest, the sparrow said, "Look at me, everyone sees the cart moving because I am carrying it." The horse chuckled but kept on pulling. By noon, the horse stopped to rest. The sparrow boasted again, "Ah, I must be truly mighty. The horse is tired, yet I still sit here proudly." As hours passed, the cart grew heavier with goods. The horse strained with all his strength. But the sparrow mocked, "If it weren't for me riding on you, no one would believe you could pull so far." At last, the horse collapsed from exhaustion. The farmer rushed to tend to him and halted the journey. The sparrow, startled, quickly flew away, leaving behind only empty boasts no one believed. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that boasting without truth will win no respect in the end. Story, The Bird and the Bell. Once upon a time, a great bell hung in a tall tower of a small village. Each day, the bell rang to tell the people when to work and when to rest. One day, a little bird perched upon the bell. When it heard the loud bong, bong, as the bell was struck, it grew excited. It thought, "If the bell rings because of me, everyone will admire me." So the bird began pecking and striking with its beak. But no matter how hard it tried, the bell made only faint clinks that no one could hear. Round and round it flew, pecking at every part of the bell. But still, no great sound came forth. At last, The bird grew weary. It sighed and said, "The bell does not ring because of me. It rings because of the strength and skill of those who know how to strike it." And so the bird flew away, having learned that wishing alone without ability or knowledge leads to nothing. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that desire alone cannot succeed without the right knowledge and skill. Story: The Dog and the Cart. Once upon a time, a heavy cart moved slowly along a dirt road. The horses strained hard, pulling steadily step by step. The wheels creaked and rumbled loudly. From the roadside, a dog suddenly ran out. Startled by the moving cart, he did not step aside. Instead, he barked fiercely, running circles around the wheels. "Woof! Woof! You shall not pass," he barked proudly. But the horses did not stop. They pressed on, caring only about their duty to deliver the cart. The more the cart rolled on, the louder the dog barked, as if he were mighty. People who saw the scene laughed. They said, "How foolish, no cart was ever stopped by a barking dog." In the end, the dog grew tired, tongue hanging out. He sat and watched the cart disappear in the distance, realizing his barking had changed nothing at all. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that noise and bluster cannot hinder those who stay steady on their path. Story: The Proud Frog. Once upon a time, a frog lived by the side of a wide pond. One day, he saw an ox walking into the meadow. The ox was so large that all the animals turned their eyes in awe. The proud frog grew jealous. He thought, "Why should all admire the ox? I can be just as great." So the frog took a deep breath and puffed himself up until his belly was round. He asked another frog, "Am I as big as the ox now?" The other frog shook his head. The proud frog puffed up even more and asked again, "What about now?" "Still smaller," replied his friend. The frog kept puffing and puffing, refusing to stop. At last, his body could bear no more. With a loud pop, the frog burst. The animals gasped, then shook their heads sadly. "Pride and vanity lead only to ruin," they said. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that pride and vanity can destroy us when we try to be what we are not.